the whole point of a word of the year or a theme of the year is really just to live life intentionally. Hello, welcome to She's Doing All Right. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Sarah Carter, and in today's episode, we are going to discuss, or I am going to talk about, my word of the year, as well as my core values. I really think that both of them can be a great jumping off point, especially if you've never done an exercise of figuring out your word of the year or figuring out what your theme of the year is. And then core values are always good, and we'll get into that. That is the whole point of this episode. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this. I think I started finding a word of the year in about maybe 2018. I started doing exercises from different YouTubers and stuff that I followed. And so one of the first ones I ever chose, I believe, was even better. That was the phrase I chose. And the point of that was I wanted to do everything I was doing, but push myself. I wanted to see if I could do it even better. If I was going to run 5 kilometers, let me see if I can take no breaks. And then once I get to the point where I'm no longer taking breaks during my run, let's see if I can run it faster. Let's make sure every single massage client I was seeing at the time got one of the best massages of their life. That was my goal. I want them to say that was one of the best massages of my life. So everything I did, even better. In 2019, I chose a phrase, we are what we repeatedly do. I was getting fed up with my habits, my mindsets, and I understood in theory that like the thoughts I was thinking and the things I was doing were just going to continue manifesting more and more of that, But I had to really focus and really work hard on changing those because I knew that, like the theme says, we are what we repeatedly do. In 2020, my word was transformation, and I really wanted to get clear on my goals and make sure that I was making decisions that encouraged me to grow and change and become the person that I wanted to be. I was not afraid of the pain. I knew there was going to be growth pains. I knew there was going to be challenges, but I wanted that year to transform me. And then in 2020, or maybe it was 2021, rather, I chose the word abundant. And on that one, I wanted to change my mindset from abundance, meaning just money, to really finding and noticing how there was abundance all around me and all within me. I was abundant in health, and the fact that my family was all really healthy, especially during 2020 and 2021. Like, my family stayed relatively healthy during that time. So I was very focused and conscious of the fact that we were abundant in health, in good health. We were abundant in wealth, in the fact that all of us had homes. We all had safe places to go. We all had food. And yes, some of us lost our jobs momentarily, and yet we still had really everything we needed and more. So abundant was not so much of becoming abundant, but rather sitting in and noticing how much we already have. So those are some of the past words of the year that I've chosen. And I always like to try and find a way to incorporate it into my screensaver or my journals or somewhere that I'm going to see it frequently, which is usually why I do a screensaver. And I don't always write just the theme of it. Sometimes I write like different things I want it to embody. So this year, my word is authenticity. And that stemmed from deciding a phrase of authentic ambition. And then that stemmed from me using a random word generator online in the first week of January because I could not come up with a word that I wanted to live by this year. So I really suggest using online word generators. I think that this one was specifically a word of the year or a theme of the year generator. And I clicked through about 5 different times and it gave me all the different words I liked. I just took through I think I maybe clicked through 8 times, and I took the words that I jumped at and I was like, yes, I want that. Yes, I want that. And so then after looking at those words, I kind of narrowed it down, wrote out some sentences, and yeah, I'll explain more of that at the end. But I settled on the phrase authentic ambition because I have a lot of things this year that I need to be ambitious about, and I need to make sure I go for it so it just doesn't stay as a thought or a dream. And authenticity is really going to be key because I have spent a lot of years kind of people pleasing and floating around and trying to make sure I'm not stepping on other people's toes. And that most people don't like that nowadays. So I have had to really figure out who am I and do my friends actually even know who I really am? Because there's a lot of myself that I've changed or kept hidden. So authenticity means really living for myself this year and making sure that everything I do is coming from a really good place, not coming from a place of trying to avoid conflict. One of the workbooks that I use that always suggests like how to do your word of the year. It's like my workbook, the Artist of Life workbook by Lavender. One of my favorite things. I've used it for the last 5 years, I believe. And even if you don't have the workbook, she does really great prompts every year and every quarter, every month on her YouTube channel, Lavender. So I would highly recommend checking that out if you are interested, and you don't have to have the workbook to do the work. So one of the things she suggests is writing out a list of things you can do to embody your theme or your word. So how can I embody my theme of authenticity? Number one for me is to be mindful. I really need to be aware of what I'm saying and what I am doing and why, and what are my thoughts about it. And it doesn't mean just not doing anything I don't want to do. That's not how life works. But making sure that I'm honest, at least with myself, of how I feel. And yeah, I'm obviously still figuring it all out as I go. The other way I can embody this is by naming my emotions. Being authentic means knowing yourself and knowing your emotions and not blowing things up and out of proportion. I think a lot of us, we get frustrated in 5 minutes and we write it off as a bad day. So figuring out that, no, I was frustrated, and what was I frustrated about, and what was the solution? 9 times out of 10, it's because I was thirsty. To be honest, I needed some more water or I needed something to eat. So that is a big part of it. Our emotions, especially for myself, our emotions are much driven by our hormones. And if those are out of balance, or if we are hungry or whatever, we're not going to be in the best place. Another way that I am embodying my theme is by saying no, and understanding that no is a complete sentence. I have always felt very scared if I'm not given the opportunity to explain myself and to clarify things. But I'm realizing that I don't need to do that. If someone asks for an explanation, then I can give it. But me going right into saying no and then explaining, it's doing more harm than good, because it makes people feel like I am trying to like warn them about things, even though I'm not. I'm just creating conversation. And I don't think that that's something I need to stop doing entirely, but also if I am actually very firm about something, I can just say no. Because it's normally when something that stresses me out that I actually start like explaining more of, even though I don't realize I'm doing it. I also want to be a lot more patient, because I get very frustrated and very impatient with things. The lack of efficiency in a lot of things bothers me. But there is something called human design, and in human design, my not self theme is frustration. And what that means is that whenever I'm frustrated, it means I am not truly reacting out of my true inner self. It is ego or like everything else that's pushing me that way. So whenever I react and I feel frustrated, I always try and step back and just be like, okay, what's happening here? And 9 times out of 10, I've lost patience with a situation. And 10 out of 10, it's not that big a deal. I'm going to be more authentic this year, or live in authenticity, is by spending way less time scrolling and more time living. I would say maybe not full-blown phone addiction, but I would say I definitely have an issue with scrolling, and it's not helpful. I want to be a creator, not a consumer. Not that there's anything wrong with being a consumer, but it's kind of like I start by looking for ideas, or I start by absorbing other people's information. And if it's not bettering you, then it's just wasting your time. And I'm not like, let me clarify there, because if it's entertaining you and that's what you need in that moment is entertainment, then that's awesome. Like, I watch stuff that just makes me laugh and it's nothing important, right? And that's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when I am scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through Instagram to the point where I'm not even finishing videos or reels because I'm bored with it already, and it's like 3 seconds. I'm looking for the next thing that, like, for that dopamine hit. And that's not who I want to be. That's not something I want to be. So in that moment, I'm not living authentically. What I would like to be doing is reading. I have so many books I need to read. I have so many topics I would like to write about and like explore my thoughts on them and potentially turn them into podcasts or blog posts or whatever. But I haven't given myself the time to do that. I need to stop saying I'm busy because it's not the case. I've been busy. I've had very full schedules, especially this month. But a lot of it comes down to the fact that I am using my time poorly when I have free time. So even if I'm so tired that I can't focus on something else, then take a nap. You know, I need to not be using my phone as rest time because it's not restful. So those are the ways I want to live authentically this year. And so in order for us to be authentic or live authentically or live within whatever theme we have, we need to know our boundaries and we need to know our values. So in every single one of my themes of the year, so whether that's we are what we repeatedly do, I needed to know my values because I wanted to become more aligned with that. Or when I'm telling myself to do everything but even better, I have to know, what do I want to do even better? Because I'm not going to go start something that I don't actually feel aligned with and then try and push myself to feel better doing that or do it even more, you know? My husband and I have been trying to incorporate more date nights, and that just means 1 hour a week, which sounds so little, but we want to make sure that if we're not going out for dinner, we are spending 1 hour once a week intentionally with each other, doing something to strengthen our relationship. Sometimes that's watching a movie, whatever. It's not my favorite thing, but then I'm going to make him sit down and discuss our core values, and we're going to put together a little book for our family so that we can raise our kids with knowing these are the family values. And I'm very excited to see how they change over the years, because obviously as we grow as individuals and grow as people, they are going to change. And then even more so as a family unit, like we're going to have to find different things that kind of grow with us. So I'm really excited about that. The difference between our values and our theme is, to me, that our values don't change nearly as frequently. And different values are necessary for different phases of life, but our values can help us live with our theme. So maybe for 4 or 5 years, or I mean, 7 years is honestly a good cycle because that's kind of the natural cycle of a lot of things. So if we have set values for 7 years, but we have a different theme every year, I can't even imagine the amount of growth we would have and like how amazing of a person we would become if we would focus on staying within those values under 7 different themes. That's a concept I just thought of right now, but I kind of really like that. My core values were put in place when I started UGC. That's called user-generated content, and it's kind of my main job now. I create content for brands, and they use it for their social pages. So it's kind of like influencing, but you're not actually being an influencer. And when I first started, I was taking on any brand that would pay me, really. But I had a couple that I took, and watching the way that the brand like responded to me or didn't really respect payment times, and sometimes even like the one brand, I told them about the faultiness of their product, and they were just kind of like, okay, thanks so much for letting us know, here's your money, have a great time, and like goodbye. And they were still reaching out to people, last I heard, so they were not quite so concerned with the fact that their product did not work. That made me realize I need to have some core values in place so that I know the brands can see this and we can make sure we align with each other. So they are in my portfolio, my core values, and I think that it's really helped me because when I look at those, I look at the brands I work with, and I'm very proud of the brands I work with. Most of the brands I do UGC for, I actually have ended up becoming somewhat of like an influencer or ambassador, I guess I'll call, because I have codes for most of them now because I'm so happy to discuss them with everyone else. So my first core value is communication. And I do love communication because there is such an importance in telling a story and building the relationship. As a worker, like as a UGC creator, this is important because people need stories. They're not going to relate to something that doesn't have a story, whether that's a visual or a verbal story, right? However, in our real life, communication is so important. And I've been texting far less because I prefer voice notes or video calls now, because communication has gotten lost in text. And when I do have conversations with people, it's making me, like, keeping that mind or that value in mind has made me ask more questions and try to be a better listener. So that is how I bring that value into my life. And it's also helpful because if someone isn't willing to communicate clearly, I understand that that is for them, and I just don't spend as much energy on that person. My second value, I have 4 of them, by the way. My second value is generosity. So this is for sharing the talents, the knowledge, and our abundance with others. Again, as a brand, this is being incorporated by making sure that people are getting good deals and making sure that people are being honest with or the brand is being honest with what they are selling, you know? Obviously, there's some marketing tactics and stuff in there, but I'm still always going to make sure that whatever I am saying is something that is giving somebody something else positive, a positive experience. And in person, in a personal aspect, it's important to me that I stay generous, because that's who doesn't love giving and gifts? I think it is the best thing in the world. And whether that's words, giving someone a really kind word, complimenting people. I try to compliment somebody every time I leave the house. I was going to say once a day, but I don't leave the house once a day. I take my kid to the daycare and then that's it a lot of the time. So that is generosity, is my second value. My third value, this one surprised me, and I didn't come into it until I was looking for a word of the year. And then I realized it was actually more of just a value that I want to incorporate, and that is beauty. So this is finding and enhancing the little details in life that make up the whole. I didn't grow up with a lot of, I don't want to say that to be rude, but I didn't grow up with a lot of beauty around me. Our house was very chaotic. My mind was very chaotic. Our family was quite chaotic. And in a lot of ways, there was so much beauty around us. But in the physical stuff, nothing was really beautiful. Pillows were stained, mattresses were stained, blankets were ripped, clothes were hand-me-downs, books were torn. And that was just, there was always dirt on the floor. So that was my memory of, and that's what I associate with my childhood a lot of the time. And I'm almost 30, and I am trying very hard to find and create beauty. And that doesn't just mean changing everything to be aesthetically pleasing or to look like magazine covers, whether that's for myself or my bedroom or my living room, but rather, like I say, enhancing the small details in life. And then my fourth value, and I wasn't sure if I could keep this one in, but this was very much younger Sarah in her early 20s. And I decided that no, I do want it to be part of my next decade. And that is adventure. To younger me, that meant traveling and getting on airplanes with 1 or 2 nights booked at a hostel in my destination and just figuring it out as I go. And then obviously that had to change a little bit as I got into a relationship and had to learn how to compromise on travel, and how we travel, which we both have. We've introduced each other to a lot of amazing differences there. But to me now, adventure means keeping an open mind and heart while creating and exploring our world. So whether that is a hike in my own backyard or the adventure of, I don't know, potty training my child, which I'm assuming we're going to be starting soon, and the adventure of doing UGC or a podcast, making sure that whatever I create and whatever I take in essentially is benefiting me, but also that I'm not closing my mind to it. And that's not to say I don't set boundaries. I think that a lot of people think an open mind means that you have no values or morals and you just take on whatever everyone else says. That's not what I'm saying at all. So the adventure, though, is creating a bit of adventure in every single day, because I miss that. Funny enough, actually, a little sidetrack, because it wouldn't be an episode of She's Doing All Right without a sidetrack, but I have always identified myself as like someone who's like flies by the seat of her pants and very spontaneous and just whatever you need. But every single test I take for personality or like what's the best routine for you, apparently I'm like, on paper I come across very type A and all the test results tell me that I'm like very type A and I need routine in order to thrive. And it makes me wonder because I don't really have much routine and I'm trying to incorporate it, but it drives me nuts. I hate making myself live by routine, but I don't know if I've ever had it long enough to actually like thrive by it. My mom raised us with a very strict routine. Like she literally had every half hour blocked out from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. And we did really well. And I'm thinking that the only reason we really survived our childhood and like 6 kids in a homeschooling family is because my mom knew that. And she made sure that we all had a super strict routine. So thank you, Mom, for that, because the 20s were a rough go with no routine. So let's send this over to you now. If you are wanting to send or set rather a word of the year or a theme of the year, but you are not sure where to begin, I would absolutely suggest a random word generator. And if you even search a word of the year generator, there are a couple. I will try and find a couple of the links that I used and throw them in the podcast description. But go through it, like tap the button 5 to 10 times and just write down the words that you really resonate with. And then from there, start narrowing them down by trying to use them in a sentence that describes your life or the life you want to live. And if you can fit more of them into one sentence, that's even better, because you want to try and like narrow it down to one word. And what might happen is that you end up with a word that is not in your little group that you wrote down. But if it feels good for you and it feels like an overarching theme that you want to see every single month and every single week of your life for the next year, then that's wonderful. Write it down. There's also a really big disclaimer I think should be going here, and that is that you do not need to find the word of the year before the end of the month. You don't need to have it before the end of January or before Christmas or whatever. You can just find things that reach out to you and that are resonating with you and take note, journal, or just write them down, and you will find an overarching theme that kind of passes through everything. And maybe by July, you'll start realizing like, wow, I've been really focusing on self-care this year. So maybe self-care is your theme of the year. And you will spend the next half of the year really focusing on what that means to you and how you can live that. The whole point of a word of the year or a theme of the year is really just to live life intentionally and to be present. Because when we know what we want our life to look like, we are going to be focused on what can we do to get there. So yeah, don't feel like you have to have this figured out. And if you haven't gotten a word of the year by the end of January, that you can no longer get one. Just you can almost start with every 3 months. Find what do you want to live like this quarter. Like I said, I did not have one and I was having a hard time coming up with a word of the year. So I used that online generator, and I would really suggest that for the values as well. I definitely had to go through a lot of value lists, and Brene Brown has a really good list, I believe. I think it's from her. Again, I will try to find the link and put it in the show notes. But she had a whole list, or whoever did, had a long list of like over 100 values. And I think there's a few lists that average on 20. So finding those, writing down words that resonate with you that you want your life to be. I think I started with about 8 words and then I pulled it down to 4. And I would suggest no more than 3 to 5 words of values that you want to live by, because as much as we want to resonate with all of them, it just does not work like that. For example, I just pulled up a list of core values, and the first 10 or first 5: honesty, integrity, wisdom, autonomy, loyalty. Those all are values I want to live by 100%, and they are very much important in my life. But those are not necessarily, I can find other ways to incorporate those, So like communication to me involves honesty, integrity, wisdom, generosity. I even have that generosity means sharing our knowledge and wisdom. So finding a value that you want to stick by does not mean that you do not stand by those other values or that you do not incorporate them in the rest of your life. That was a really hard thing for me to accept because in my mind, I'm like, well, if I have to pick 4 of them, then that means I'm saying no to the other like 200 out there. And I'm a horrible person. That's absolutely incorrect. So find the 4 that fit, or 4 to 5, 3 to 5. Once you have your word of the year and your values all figured out, you're going to watch your life fall into place because you're going to start making better decisions for yourself based on knowing yourself now. You're going to know more of who you are and who you want to be, and you're going to make decisions that get you there. And one of the best things I've really received from doing this the last few years is that I felt like I was a little bit more in control, but also less worried when I wasn't in control. And in 2022, last year, I forget what year we're in. In 2022, though, I actually did not have a word of the year. I didn't have journals to keep myself tracked. And it was also the year that I fell into that really deep depression. I don't know if you've listened to that episode. That was the second one about postpartum depression and motherhood and everything. And yeah, that was 2022. And I tried a few times to get caught up and like figure out a word or a theme of the year. And the overarching theme was literally just survival. And had I been okay to put that word in, because I wasn't, I was like, that's not what I want to live with. But I should have been okay with that word because I think it would have made my decisions throughout the year a lot better for myself. I would have chosen to do things. I would have been more vocal with figuring out like, this is what I need to do for survival right now. And there's no shame in that. That is kind of the end of this episode. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this episode. That's easily done over on the podcast Instagram page at She's Doing All Right. So if you decide to go over there and leave me your thoughts, please also let me know what your word of the year is if you've decided one. Or if you have any questions about it or you are struggling to find one, ask away. Send me a DM or leave a comment on one of the posts and I will get right back to you and see what I can do to help you. If you'd like to follow my personal page and keep up with me, you can find me on both TikTok and Instagram at sarah.g.carter. But thank you so much for listening. If you really think that anyone that would appreciate hearing this message or could gain value from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you shared it with them. I'm very honored that out of all the podcast episodes that exist out there right now, you chose to listen to this one. And if you're still listening to this at the end of this, thank you. I am very happy you're here. And I look forward to seeing you again next week in our next episode. Before you go, are you looking for a truly clean skincare line that has beautiful core values? And do you also want to save a little bit of money? Well, let me tell you about Stun Collective. They are a minimalist skincare brand built for routines and self-care. Their products are entirely microbiome friendly, made in small batches in Canada, and they are always plant-based. I have had hormonal acne since I was 13, most of my life now, and their oils have been an absolute game changer. So I still get breakouts if I eat poorly or if I'm really dehydrated and don't get enough sleep, but my skin itself is looking so much brighter when I use the Glow AM serum, and I honestly get so many compliments about it. I've made a couple videos about it because like my skin glows and people notice. My absolute favorite products are their AM and PM oils, Dew and Revival. So when I have both products, because I'm almost out of all of them, but I would use Gloss, which is their, sorry, it wasn't Glow, it's called Gloss. So Gloss is their clarifying serum, and it is made with licorice root and willow bark. It helps reduce the appearance of your pores and blemishes while supporting your skin barrier. It makes my skin very soft, my complexion so glowy, and I just love that one. And then I follow it up with Dew, which is their AM oil. So Dew is their brightening face oil, and this one is loaded with vitamin C, and it's designed to brighten and even the skin tone and really amplify the hydration. So I have found this is like a lifesaver during these Calgary winters. I live in Calgary. It is very dry, very cold here. So I would 100% recommend the Dew, and then their nighttime oil is Revival. I love to use those for my lymphatic drainage massages. I've been doing those day and night, and it's changing my skin all around. But you want to be really careful with what kind of oils you use if you're going to do lymphatic drainage massage, because you are rubbing that into your skin. So If you want to make sure that you are getting clean, quality ingredients and not going to hurt your skin, but rather help repair your microbiome, skin barrier, all of the above, you need to check out Stun Collective. You can go to stunco.com/SarahCarterUGC, or you can simply use Sarah Carter UGC at checkout, and that will get you 10% off. I will see you next week. Bye.